Well, good morning. Good morning. How's everybody doing? We'll just give guys a moment to just log in. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good morning. How is everyone doing? Welcome, welcome, welcome. I want to look at something that's not quite about being born again, going to heaven, etc., but it relates. Okay, there's a relationship in terms of the command that God gave us, in the Garden of Eden. So, and also Jesus repeated. So, we're going to just have a look at that. I'm going to get started. I can't exactly tell whether people are live or not because I'm using a different gadget that's not showing me that. So, I'm just going to go ahead anyway. So, I'm very concerned about the narrative that is being sold that the church has nothing to do with elections, has nothing to do with politics and all that, basically seeking to shut down pastors and stop pastors from talking. And I've noticed that quite a number of pastors are not talking, and guiding people. And I suppose they've also learned over time. And I suppose also for many pastors, a lot of the challenge is they get very concerned about things like exits from church. And I think also the sheep have learned that. So they tend to think that they can punish pastors or discipline pastors or manipulate pastors by leaving the church. But the truth is that even Jesus was left. So if Jesus could be left, then, I mean, watu ni wale wale. I mean, you remember when Jesus talked about the taking Holy Communion, eating his body and drinking his blood. And people were so offended. And imagine if you were to teach such a thing, telling people you can eat my body, drink my blood, and by the way, if you do that, you're going to live forever. So you can imagine what that sounded like. And the thing is that what we teach just leans heavily on faith. It depends very heavily on faith. And so that's what really matters at the end of the day. And of course, there's faith, and we're talking about the right kind of faith. We're talking about the leading of the Holy Ghost. We're talking about checking everything against the Word of God, the Bible. You can't just get things from the air, and then you're not checking them against the Word of God. And we check the fruit so that we can be able to test the Spirit. But we cannot, as pastors, operate from head knowledge. And speaking of which, the church, the ban on registration of churches has been lifted, yay. But then I see a bit of a problem in that, which I think I would have to discuss in a totally different broadcast. Today, I want to focus on the issue of governance. So I guess also I can speak on this because I mean, I've sat on boards and, I'm a HR director. That's my background. Now studying law as well, and therefore I've been in management for a long time. I've done also administration management, and at the same time worked a bit in government, but mostly in the private sector. And then of course I run my own businesses, which is the most challenging thing, by the way, out of all the things that I've done. But I'm just going to share out of this to speak into governance and hopefully speak to the next government, the people who are coming in to form the next government. The first thing I want to say is we are really trusting God that people that fear the Lord, Christians, indeed, practicing Christians, not really religious Christians, but practicing Christians, that they will ascend to power. But of course, the difficulty is always, the expectation that because I'm a Christian, you're going to vote for me. And then when we do know them, the challenge sometimes also becomes, how do they then vie to a point where, because to be able to get elected, you need certain things like charisma. So you're not going to just come up with good ideas, cannot express yourself. No one knows you. You won't use social media. I don't know why people don't use social media. It's such a powerful tool. And then you get very upset that we are not, working with you, but also, the expectation that people will just see, hey, you're vying, and then come and back you up and stand with you. And then also, if you do reach out, that people cannot speak into that, cannot correct you, cannot ask you questions. I think those are some of the challenges we are having. And I know quite a number of pastors are doing a really good job going back, not to the place of, elections are here. Let's work with the people who are actually vying that we don't even know, but from the place of discipleship, and it's important. If we are going to make sure that the biblical standards in this nation are upheld, then we need to really pay attention to people who make a difference in the right places. And in particular, legislature is very, very important. And that's something I think the Catholic Church has done really, really well, because you notice that especially whenever, agenda comes up about abortion. By the way, I look for Catholic legislators, and they've been amazing, and I thank God, I remember the last time that we were with Ann Kyoko, who does an amazing job in this area, and we were outside Parliament because of the bill by Susan Kihika, who at this point, I don't know whether she's still vying or not, but I'm like, what's that about? How can somebody, all the bills you look at that they have taken to Parliament, let me not say all, because I've not checked that terminology, but you check the bills that this person has been taking to Parliament, and they keep taking anti-family bills. And then still, we give them an opportunity because of their name, and the fact that their dad was a politician. And that's the beginning of our problem in this country, that we don't check on the issue of values. And we haven't learned even from watching America, watching US, watching Australia. Sorry, US, of course, is America, but I meant the UK, and watching Australia and nations where things have really gone south. And it's all about leadership. And the issue of morality, cannot be ignored, because if you put in place, or people put in place people with wrong morals, then that will destroy the family system. And it's the beginning of disintegration, because even according to Article 45, and not even according to, let me say, it is a fact, and then Article 45 of the Constitution affirms it, that family is actually everything. It's the core. It's the core of society. It's the core of who we are. Obviously, the role of the church and is very, very critical. And of course, for me, I'm getting very, very concerned as politicians are really running this narrative, which sadly people are following about. Pastors, and the mockery of pastors. Fortunately for some of us, it does not affect us. But unfortunately, quite a number of servants of God get very hurt when, you comment on something, and people come and attack you. And of course, the first thing they say is that you're a fake pastor. They haven't even checked what you preach. But because you told them the truth, you become a fake pastor. So you do need to be able to tell, this is ignorance. There's also a spirit behind it, And then also, of course, with social media, sometimes you could be arguing with a 12-year-old. And no offense to 12-year-olds. I have a really amazing, she's not 12 anymore. I have even a 10-year-old who argues better than some people, just based on the fact that they have the fear of God. But as a nation, we seem to be okay with lies, and we seem to be okay with propaganda. And we pick something from the media or something from politicians, and you just speak it again. You're not thinking about it. You're not asking a question about it. You're not, I remember yesterday when we were looking at this amazing guy who's doing sprints. Sorry, I've never quite, whatever his name, but who's supposed to be traveling to the US, and his visa had been delayed, and of course, I took time to pray about that. I mean, I really felt bad and trusted God for a miracle, and I blessed God he was able to go. And I pray that he'll be able to overcome the jet lag, and it's crazy jet lag, losing hours, and then of course be able to do great. I'm so proud of that young man. So sorry, I don't remember the name. Sometimes that happens to me. But in the discussion about it, I tend to get onto the main media platforms to just see what they're saying. Interestingly enough, I don't watch news and I don't watch TV, but I get onto their platforms just to see what they're saying and what they're writing. Why? Because it's important for us to hold them to account. And then one of the things I've come to learn is from the book of Matthew about how it says that when the body of Jesus, when they found that when the guards ran to the leadership, and then when they said, oh my goodness, the authorities, I guess the cops of the day, oh my goodness, his body is not there, we don't know what has happened, it's not there, the stone has been rolled away. What do you mean the stone has been rolled away? Weren't you there all the time? And the body was stolen. Sorry, the body is not there. Immediately remember what this government did. Okay, so corruption started a long time ago. So the government basically weighed on this thing and said, wait, hey, they had said it's going to rise. But if we say it's going to rise, if we said the guy has risen, then we are going to be in trouble because we actually, convicted him, even without a trial. We judged him and all that. The trial was just really neither here nor there. But we killed him. We basically executed the guy. And then they found out that he was the Messiah, or he's the Messiah. So what do we do? So they actually went to these guys and they paid them. The government paid the guards and they told them to tell everybody that the disciples had stolen the body. So I've come to learn that if you're not careful about what is being said, because of this last part of that message, that says, to this day, people in Israel still believe that lie. So, and having been to Israel and seen, and, I remember asking some Jews, I remember asking them, can't you guys feel the glory of Jesus in this place? And they looked at me like, are you crazy? And I'm like, you walk in the land where Christ walked. I mean, you can feel the presence of God. You can, when you're, standing you're in the hotel room looking at Galilee, I could feel myself being healed. The Sea of Galilee. It's such an amazing experience, and I'd hoped that we would actually take that trip together. Visiting Israel is just a complete game changer in terms of you as a Christian. But back to the platforms, the media platforms. I've worked in media for 7 years, and I thank God for that work experience, and I thank God for how I was allowed to get really involved in the business. Actually, I learned how to run a business, from working with my MDs, and of course the GMs and the other board members and the management team. Just interacting with them and asking them questions and learning this and taking an interest, being as a HR director, taking an interest, because the beauty with HR, and I think that's part of why HR people tend to move easily into being CEOs, is because we are required by our profession to understand other professions so that we can know how to help them set things like performance goals, performance targets, and then of course evaluation, and then be able to check that evaluation and confirm as an independent party and the professional in the area on whether it makes sense or not against what you're dealing with every day. And you look at performance evaluation and performance goals over a lengthy period of time, and you compare somebody's performance while drawing graphs and charts and all that on every employee and departments and leaders, then you're able to make your decisions on what kind of people you also have, any gaps that they may have. So anyway, going back to the media, please don't ignore and don't fail to get there and comment. Don't fail to get there and put a scripture, that nullifies the lie. What is the narrative? Media is actually one of the end time false prophets. Don't take them lightly. Don't take them lightly. Media is an amazing tool. And I'm so glad to see churches opening media houses. But then again, I ask myself, why aren't they getting Christians from media houses, paying them professionally and running those media houses in such a way that they handle everything? Something like the news. It's critical that Christians give the news from a Christian perspective of what does this mean exactly? What are the spiritual implications? What are the physical implications? What then should we also do? Anyway, but also media houses can't choose what narrative they're going to run. But the problem with the media houses in Kenya, in particular, is that they focus very heavily on advertisement. So their focus is very heavy on adverts. So you find that if you are a client advertising in my media house and giving them a lot of revenue, then they will consider the issue of whether they are going to actually antagonize you. Okay, so it's important to note. At the same time, when elections are coming up, it's important to note that one of the things that media does is they look at which candidate they are backing up. And then they use their platforms to push a narrative on that candidate. So it's not independent reporting. You may find some independent reporting on established places, but those that are not wholly established and those that try to pretty much but even established places, I mean, I just find citizens so biased, and that's just crazy, and I've just found them extremely biased. I mean, it's very clear that they're supposed to push Raila. It's very evident. I've not yet figured out what NTV is pushing just yet. What I have seen about them is quite a bit of attacks on churches, which I guess is because they're a Muslim, whatever. But Ismailis tend not to attack other religions. And also, anyway, Islam refuses people to attack other religions. So it could just be individuals there or leadership levels there, but not necessarily the broad kind of Aga Khan strategy for sure. I don't know that, but man. So anyway, I remember when I worked in the media house and being a prophet, I remember going up to one of our MDs and saying to them, why are you guys very evidently pushing for this man as president? Because they are not going to be the president of this country, God told me. And what's going to happen is that we are actually going to lose government contracts. And that's exactly what happened, you know? And we do need to be able to have courageous people in leadership who can actually go and speak. It's not really listened to. Maybe if I'd stayed longer, maybe I don't know, but I've still commented anyway on the group that this direction is not working and it's not going to work. Prophets are often not listened to, and then you start listening to board meetings and watching people, being told in HR to render people redundant, and you're looking, and personally for me, what I did say is, I'm sorry, no, I won't do that, because I'm aware that the problem we're having is because we are not getting these government tenders because we fought the current government. However, I did bring it up and it was discussed, and I did get feedback when I warned you and told you the person is not going to come in. And I know you might not understand the prophetic, but I did tell you that Donald Trump was coming in, and you laughed. So really, that gave you, yeah, I mean, really, 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 I mean, it was absolutely absurd that Donald Trump would come in. So that could only be prophecy. So the least you could do is try to understand. So anyway, back to just governance, focus on governance. With the incoming government, what I would encourage, if those who are coming in would listen and you have access to them, is there's the manifesto. The manifesto is a marketing plan. I don't know that you sat down to think about it and plan about it. The best thing would be that you do that, and you notice that Kibaki did do that. And so that way you don't just promise things and then you don't keep them. And yes, you'll get away with it because people want those things. But what does that then mean in terms of when you're running again? You lied to people, and that was important, especially when you lie about things to do with like children, for example, what you're going to do for children. It's very, very important that we hold people to account. And I know we are saying that Ruto was the one who talks about the laptops, but it was a Jubilee manifesto. And so the person responsible is actually Uhuru Kenyatta, not William Ruto. I disagree with that. Yeah, I have worked under MDs, and a president is considered to be an MD, and the deputy MD can do nothing if the MD won't approve it. And those are some of the things I think for me as a HR director that I'm looking at and wondering, why can't Kenyans see this? That if I am the CEO and I stop something, you're not going to do it. But then you're not going to do it. Okay. It's as simple as that. And then in addition to that, I can also tell people around me that this person is no longer in my management team. However, I'm unable to fire them because it's going to give me labor issues. Da, 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 da. So just give them whatever every day. Give them, what is it called? A newspaper every day. Let them sit there. Let them be idle. But then one of the ways we get, these are mirror effects. One of the ways that in management we get rid of somebody, okay, sorry to use the word get rid of because that's not the word that's supposed to be used, but when an employee becomes a problem, I don't do that though, I thank God, but it's something that a lot of MDs will do, especially because they don't have that HR background, is that they will frustrate the person. So they will get you to quit. And I remember learning about a case of one of our big banks where they were wondering what to do with their senior management because, man, the payroll system was very bloated. And, if rendering them redundant was going to be very expensive because it comes with a cost. And so they wanted them to quit. So what they did was they took them out of the closed offices, the private offices, and then they put them in, an open plan office. So all of them were put there. And then they began to give work to their deputies. And assign their deputies. And they got their newspapers, they got their, what is it called? They got their newspapers and they got their their perks as managers, but they could not leave the office. They could not go onto computers to do anything else. I guess in those days, there wasn't much unless you wanted to. Anyway, there wasn't much. Let me put it that way. So they had everything, but they had no work. And normally, what happens if you truly are a worker or think you are anyway, that is extremely frustrating. Also the disrespect of someone working with your boss. I remember someone that I worked with somewhere along the way. I worked for very many companies, so you'd not be able to figure out which one. Someone once told me, well, hey, when our boss wants to get rid of you, one of the things they do is that they start working with your assistant. So your assistant is the one who's coming to tell you, so you're finding out about something, then the assistant says, this and this and the other. Then you say, since when did we start doing that? They say, oh, since this and this happened. And you start realizing, yeah, there are things in my department that I don't know about. So back to government. The way you run a government, I've never run a government though, but I have taken time to study governments that work under HR and also under my law studies. And one of the things I've taken a keen interest on is what do governments that do well do versus what do governments that don't do well do. And if you go back to Kibaki government, obviously, there's the fact that the guy was brilliant. That you can't get back, you could say, what did he study? And let me try and study it, but maybe you cannot go to Makerere, you cannot get the work experience he had. However, success in government is not about the brilliance, or let me not say brilliance, let me not say lack of, because again, when you lack brilliance, it's a problem, but about the you look at is having a leader. And for me, therefore, what part of what I look at, even in terms of when I'm looking at candidates, presidential candidates especially, are they going to be able to handle this or not? I look at whether they work in a team, whether they have people with them, and whether they actually are big on the issue of this is our team, this is who we are, and affirming those team members that you're not the diva, you're not the one, it's not a show where you're the one, because you'll never be able to achieve anything by yourself, no matter how amazing you are. So one of the things you'll notice about Kibaki is that Kibaki took time to recruit the right people. Actually, he really took time there. And he sat down, and of course he had his kitchen cabinet, and they took time and they worked on the issue of the right people for the right job. By the way, that in itself is critical, but you can't do that without actually that is critical, but part of what you need to do is be able to have envisioned what do you want to see. What you want to see. For Kibaki being an economist, he understood that if you fix the economy of a nation, you fixed a lot of things in that nation. And so he ran with that. And so the goal, fix the economy of the nation. How do you fix an economy of the nation? you cannot say you're fixing the economy of the nation when the education system is crap. It doesn't work like that. The thing with the education system is that it's a long-term plan. But if we can make sure that our people are educated, if we can make sure that our people are able to get at least even just a basic education, it makes a very big difference, because there are certain parameters that lead to development. There are certain parameters that lead to success in a country. And if you can change the cost of living of people, then you have changed a lot of things. If you can sort out their amenities, things like water, the road system, the security, because who's going to come and invest in a country, and who's going to feel comfortable building anything in a country where people, I mean, the security is a problem. So things like those are very, very critical, and it's important to look at that. And I think also part of what I would say is, I think one of the reasons why lawyers make very good legislators, not legislators, that's law, but sorry, I am so tired. I think that's also part of what's happening to me this morning in exam season. So part of the reason why lawyers make very good I don't want to use the word politician. Let me use the word leader, because politician, I don't know. Me, I find that there are a lot to do with sales and no after sales service. You can have a very good salesperson, but marketers tend to do a little bit more, because they work together with customer service and after sales service, so that you want to go back. It's not just a one hit, but people think about it. Someone comes and sells to you something, and you accept and you vote for them, and you've got 5 years unless you impeach them, and then now after 5 years again is when they come again. So every time that the 5 year period is almost coming to an end is when they at least for the 10-year term, is when they start coming up to butter you up. They're more of salespeople. But in leadership, and that's what you find in leaders who you don't even see them, by the way, campaigning much, because their track record has really spoken, but particularly in the county level, because remember, county is very family kind of oriented. And, if you look at people like Kivuda Kibwana, very soft spoken guy, very quiet. I did not think he was going to be able to make it in terms of vying for president because of his nature, because there's a certain charisma you need, aka can you look at Wajakoya and see that. But when you speak to people in his county, he didn't even have to struggle to be re-elected, because they had seen his work. He put his work to the ground. And it's very unfortunate, especially in our counties, when the counties won't work, because for us to get developed as a nation, the county has to work. Please note, one of the things I have noted when studying countries like Sweden, especially these European countries, because things really work in terms of in those areas. I mean, forget about US. I mean, US has a lot of drama. I mean, if you look at things like the crime rate, I mean, you can't say that a place is worthy of emulating when the crime rate is just ridiculous, and there are all sorts of weird things. It's not a safe place to live, and US is not a safe place to be. But when you study, like the Nordic countries, and you see, other than of course the Christianity aspect, which is so sad, you notice certain things like the work ethic, like the schooling. One of the things I noticed about them, and by the way, it's taken traveling there, and that's what the Lord did, traveling there, being there a bit, and being able to study that, is things like, do you know, in a lot of those countries, the children go to school, all right, and they have this system of education. A number of them don't go to school for long, in terms of their classes are not like ours, where we start driven at 6:30. Children are on buses, as early as 5 a.m., and the child is like 4 years old. And then they come back home by 8 p.m. We really need to look at the issue of our education. It's really worrying. We seem to think, especially as Africans, that more is better, and that's not the case. It's more about the quality. It's about the way that you instruct and teach. That's what it's more about. So anyway, when you look at these guys, one of the things you'll even notice is that their leaders are not celebrities, as in they are actually servants. So, and I guess that's something that I can pick from Kalonzo, which he said, but was just a story, but they serve. So, like, you will see them on bicycles instead of having these really expensive cars that are also polluting the atmosphere. And then it's a whole entourage and they're stopping traffic and things like those. You see them on a bicycle. You see a whole prime minister who is equivalent to our president. It's just a name that's different. And they're on a bicycle. Okay, a nice bicycle. They're on a bicycle in their suit, and they have, their briefcase, and they're going in. Of course, some of it can also be for PR, but they do that anyway. uh you will see them not having a lot of servants and all these things that us as Africans, we have decided that you know it's a mark of a chief. I guess we go back to our chiefs, isn't it? Mukubwa, you know and those are the things that just eat into us, and we're not expecting them to work. We're not expecting them to get anything done. We're not holding them to account. And the moment they raise up psychophants, and the moment you try even to raise anything, you cannot dare. And they don't have to talk about an agenda of what they will do. They can stand and say, I will awake in the morning and stand on the hill and look at all of you and say, good morning, my people. And you'll be like, yeah. And that's why we are not getting ahead. The difference between countries that are going ahead and a lot of us African countries is that we are so focused on individuals instead of agenda, instead of work. And then, of course, we are focused on our president instead of being more focused, of course, on the people in the counties and the work of the counties. Go to US and every county is like a small country by itself. They have their flag, they have their economy, they have their tax laws, they have all these things, and they are functioning. So how about we focus so much on devolution, but at the same time on issues of governance, things like having town hall meetings? How can you be a leader in the county who never holds town hall meetings? An MCA, you never have town hall meetings. How can you not call people in a tiny little area, even once a month or once a quarter, and then just have a cup of tea with them and then discuss with them, this is where we are at, this is what our goals are. Like the way you have management meetings every Monday or every Tuesday of the week, and then you give your reports and you say, this is what's happening. And the key members of your team actually give a presentation of where they are at. And then, like a quarterly kind of review and feedback, and then asking for their views and all that, giving the tenders out in that area in terms of saying, we will be looking for these positions. And then the people in your county also feel we are going to earn from this county because of merit, not because we know so and so, because that's part of the problem. I as a pastor, running with this candidate, not because the Lord has shown me that this is the right person or that I've taken time to see what they stand for and that they'll be the best thing for this country, but because they tithe into Sozo Church of God, or that as a pastor, I will get these benefits and all those things. That is wrong, and I'm using pastor so that I'm not then attacking any other professions, but then you have people who are standing and rallying behind this person. Like when I look at the debate between Igathe and Sakaja, I don't agree with whatever, happened with Sakaja in terms of, it's looking like there are some issues there, that need to be looked at. And Avra is concerns about that. However, it's a fact that no matter how qualified, intelligent, etc., that Igade is, Sakaja's experience, he was more prepared for this debate. And that's what you call work experience. By the way, when employers say, I require 5 years of work experience, there's a reason why, in a similar position. There's a reason why we say that, this and this thing is an added advantage. And let's go back again to the issue of even those qualifications. When you say that you require all these governors to have a degree, it's a degree in what? It's a degree in what? You can just have a degree in mushrooms, and mushrooms, by the way, are very profitable. So maybe I need to find something else. You have a degree in what? I don't even know, like, for example, if you have a degree in art, you're a painter, you are an artist. How will that come in unless there's something greater about that, and by the way, Honorable KJ is a good friend of mine. And by the way, he has a degree in art and he's doing a really good job in Dagoretti. So, I don't even know how to give that example. But there's a little bit more. And maybe part of what we need to look at is the qualifications of someone who vies for a second term in the same position. I think that's something we probably need to look at and then entrench in IBC rules or, our constitution and things like those. And I guess there's bits of it there, under the integrity, the article that talks about integrity of leaders, but we ever really put it in there. And by the way, one of the things I want to begin to do, I think you're seeing me talking about more and more about law, is educate, give civic education about what are your rights under the Constitution and what can you do if you actually, believe someone who's very good at marketing and selling themselves and came up with this manifesto that looks good and probably got a brand, an image person who then recognizes that if they use this color, then it will be associated with this or that or the other. And therefore you fell for that and you are duped. What are your rights under the Constitution? Because, by the way, it is possible to actually recall your leader. And I think that's something we need to begin to consider and look at, the issue of recalling our leaders. Recalling the leader refers to firing them. It actually refers to firing them. What the Constitution has done is made it very difficult for you to fire the leader because of the issue of just victimization, because of malice and all those things. So I think this particular broadcast will need to be continued. But just looking at governance, there are key things that we need to look at. And I think I've brought out a few of them. But the issue of the right people for the right jobs is critical. And part of the problem, with the governments that have been, and when you look at the difference between Kibaki's government, which was very unique and did a really good job, versus the other governments, you will notice that Kibaki actually got the right people for the right job, and then he had a strategic plan and strategic goals, and then he broke them down into chewable pieces, and then from there was measurement. So for the first time, you see Kibaki has a performance measurement measure, which has been thrown out after he left, which is such a shame. Because in HR, we say what gets measured gets done. So if you're not going to measure your leaders, you're not going to get anything done. So performance measurement is very, very critical. And then in addition to that, you then want to look at what kind of reward system should you then use. And the media has tried to help in that area of measures by going, and I don't remember which media house has been doing this. I'm so sorry, and I can't see comments, unfortunately, so I can't exactly ask you guys. But which, there's a media house that has been looking at best performing, governments, best performing counties and things like those. But then again, you ask yourself, what parameters are used for that? Because you see the electorate coming in, people who live in that place and saying, what nonsense is this? I live here. What are you talking about? So a lot of times it tends to be very political. And those are the kind of things that churches can look into that have, TV houses, you can look at that. We have tried to set up a TV house. It's extremely expensive. So we'll just continue to use this social media. And who knows, maybe it's something that we're going to look into, especially coming from the HR side. What are the measures of a successful county government? And what are the measures of a successful presidency? And what are the measures of a successful cabinet? What are the measures, of these people? And then, of course, come back and give those measures. A lot of times, by the way, you might find that people have goodwill, they are willing, but they don't have the capacity. So, for example, you've not taken any management courses, you've not taken, and by the way, you need to take management classes, okay? So do the degree, but I think we really need professional courses, and especially in leadership. And what if the government looked at that instead of giving these guys such hefty perks, or even not necessarily pay for it themselves, because that would just make things really expensive. Like, for example, to be a HR practitioner, you're required to do certain courses every year and get points so that you can keep your license. And then to keep your license as an advocate of the High Court as well, there are certain things that you're required to do so that your license can continue to be renewed, and it's annual. So how about if we went into looking at that in terms of the people who are in government, and I mean the people who are in leadership in government, and especially those that we keep voting for, but also the whole workforce. Performance contracting, very, very important that it resumes. I have seen the power of a performance management system. If it is set well and then the evaluations are done well, it really, really works. And then, of course, the rewards or the consequences of that. And then, one of the things you'll also notice about the Kibaki government was that he had initiatives, rapid results initiative, RRIs, rapid results initiatives. So they would have 100 days, and then you'd be prepared for that, and then you'd go into 100 days, and the focus was this, especially when a goal was falling behind, and then now you'd get that goal done. And I thank God that I was able to be in lower ranks in that process, and learn and see that, because in the Kibaki government, incidentally, by the way, during the Kibaki's time, is the only time that I worked in government, like really. Because, yeah, interestingly enough, because 2003 was the first time I worked in government. It was, in the Kibaki team, and I remember it was so exciting, even though I'd come from private sector. And then again, 2007, yeah, around there. So when I speak, I also speak with hindsight of having been in HR bodies or project teams. What did we do right? So it's not enough to just say, oh, Kibaki did so well. What did he do right? By the way, when the Lord, when I accepted the call to be a pastor in 2000 and let's say 2012 or so, I'd been a pastor pretty much for a really long time. I just didn't realize that that's what it was anyway. But when I accepted now that formal call, one of the things I did was that I went and studied servants of God who had done well, what they did well, what they did wrong, what are the things I needed to be careful about. And I have those books in my house. So it's very important, if you're getting into leadership or getting into a position, go and study people who've done well. Pick up, books like From Good to Great. Those are good reads. Habits of Highly Effective People. Get those kind of books, because they also help a lot. And then, of course, do the courses and take the professional courses. God bless you all. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. Thank you for joining us. Amen. God bless you.